If it is about mastery being your intention and your practices and your drive to sit in deep emotional awareness, then in that sense, yes, you can get to mastery. And can you get to the most optimum levels of leadership without that emotional mastery? No, in my opinion.
Welcome to Adapt or Die, Transformative Leadership Conversation. This is the show where I invite executive, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and we talk about the things that force them to pivot or to perish. I'm Andreas Pettersson. I'm a former tech CEO that turned executive coach, and I'm also the founder of Leaders Adapt. Today's guest is Leila Entezam. Leila, welcome to the show. Tell me a little bit about who you are.
Me. So I'm a neuro-emotional performance coach. Neuro-emotional intelligence is combining neuroscience, psychology, and EQ. And so basically I work with high performers on understanding why they do what they do, mastering their emotions, and optimizing their choices.
And recently, and you're also a friend of mine, and we used to work together when I was a CEO, and that was lovely. But recently, you launched something like this, right? Tell me a little bit about how did this happen?
I did. So it's called the Heart of Peak Performance, Emotional Mastery for High-Performing Men. And it came as a result of year after year seeing the same challenges with the high performers, predominantly men that I would work with, and wanting to reach a broader audience and knowing that, doing coaching one-on-over was going to be more limiting, and hoping that the book would be a way to share the tools that I use or a lot of the tools that I use with a greater audience, again, by seeing the same challenges repeat.
So what are those challenges? And you don't have to disclose mine since we used to work together.
Well, yours were not uncommon in the sense that it would be, what it takes to be a high performer, the being hyper focused, the drive, less in emotional engagement and emotional connection. The idea that maybe emotions and somatic awareness and things like that matter less. The bringing executives and high performers on board with the idea that actually those things matter a lot. And how do you integrate that into your decision making and your leadership?
If you look back at the last 10 years when you've been working with all these high performers, and you can sort of do this podcast and you can summarize it up for everyone. So now, like, everyone who listens to this should really pay attention. What were the things that baffle you the most with the hardest things for people to overcome?
The idea that, at least for this audience in particular, the idea that your emotions matter, and they matter a lot, that they are a critical data set. Your brain processes information emotionally before it does cognitively and logically. In particular, high performers want to dismiss emotions as, oh, those are limiting, those hold me back. But instead, on the contrary, they are critical, and having them overcome that resistance and embrace the idea that this is a critical data set is probably been the greatest opportunity and challenge.
How do you even go about, let's say that you're going to start working with someone, or you're trying to get in working with someone. Tell me how that conversation goes about. Do you sit there and say, you're not in touch with your emotions?
Well, generally it starts with them saying, hey, listen, I don't really believe in this stuff, and it's, it's crap and whatever. And then having to overcome that resistance. And I think that's one of the reasons that in my experience, having a background in neuroscience is really helpful, is because I'm able to start with the science and then move to the psychology and move to the personal experiences from there. And so once I'm showing you the science and the research, then it becomes harder to dispute.
I love that answer. And I also run in the circles, and we know that a lot of CEOs they don't want to talk emotions. They believe it's all about the numbers. And what's the pattern? Because I'm a strong believer, and you know this, your childhood coping mechanisms, all of that replays for the rest of your life until you deal with them. What's the number one trait, just to see if any of the listeners here would say, oh, that's actually me? What's the number one childhood thing, coping mechanism that lives on with people as adults?
Detachment or some variation of that, compartmentalization, avoidance. The challenge is that it is a farce in the sense that it's one brain and one database. And that means that there isn't really such a thing as compartmentalization. So what you can do is tell yourself that you have sort of, blocked this off, or you're not going to think about it. You've put it away, but it exists there. The analogy I use in the book is it's like if I'm spilling a bottle of water, but I'm just not looking at it. The longer I look away, the bigger mess I've created, but the mess is being created. And so that is, just because I don't look doesn't mean it's not happening.
Oh, I love that. So many people need to hear that because, again, people are suppressing their emotions. And if they live their entire life that way, it's hard. And then all the stress of being an entrepreneur and running a company. And then you also wonder, it's like, why am I not making deep, meaningful connections with my employees?
Well, the thing I would add to that is the other challenge for that audience becomes that they sit in these influential positions. They think, if emotions make me look weak, or they think, hey, I have to hold up a certain image. Either the board is looking, investors are looking, the team is looking. They don't have safe spaces. They don't have places where they feel understood. Their brain processes information differently. All of those create obstacles to the opportunity to have a place to try to feel emotionally seen and felt and understood, even if I wanted to. And so, the part of the intention of the book is to say, I see you and I understand why and how you are this way. But it's the adage of what got you here won't get you there. Just because some of those things have served you in becoming the leader that you are today doesn't mean they are what creates the optimal opportunity for you going forward.
Most people that help others, they have helped themselves first. Tell me a little bit about what are your struggles or your background, and why are you so I was about to say a bad word. Why are you so incredibly good at what you do, having worked with you and known you for a long time?
Thank you for that. It's I understand a lot of the sentiments. So, trying to pitch to people the idea that, hey, emotions matter long before it was so much more mainstream in leadership today. And then, over and over dealing with a population that starts out saying, hey, your work is BS, having to overcome that, questioning myself of like, but I'm telling you, I know I'm not wrong. I'm telling you, I know this matters. And then a decade later, it's mainstream. So having to deal with those resistances and my own version of imposter syndrome and my own version of questioning myself, and standing in my truth and that certainty, has definitely been one of my obstacles to overcome.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing. And you know me, you know my background. I battle those as well. I think most people do. Insecure overachiever, some imposter syndrome, all of that. I also think that the best leaders I have met have overcome some of these, and because they understand, they have the curiosity on other people while they are still, how do I say, very result oriented.
For sure. And, leaders, it's not new information to tell high performing executives that once you get to that part of performance, that you've already proven that the tactical parts of the role. Whether you're an athlete, you're an executive, you've already shown to have those skills. But the skills that matter more to create influence and impact and buy-in and inspire other people, those are the human engagement skills. Even if we talk about it in a world of AI, it's still the human engagement skills. And so that's another reason why this work becomes even more critical the more you move up in the ranks.
There are always extremes, right? So is it possible that true mastery can exist, true high performance can exist, and is it sustainable unless you become a master at emotional understanding as well?
The challenge with saying you can become a master is that if you define mastery as there's an end point, and if that's the definition, I would say no, because there's always more to learn and uncover about yourself. Just like there's always more to learn and uncover, even about our understanding of the way the brain works. But if it is about mastery being your intention and your practices and your drive to sit in deep emotional awareness, then in that sense, yes, you can get to mastery. And can you get to the most optimum levels of leadership without that emotional mastery? No. In my opinion, no.
I like it. For the listeners, Leila is a person that is very direct. She has a very strong opinion. But what's super cool is it's actually medium held. So if you give her the good argument, she will absolutely listen to you and change your mind. She and I have had many brain chess conversations.
Yes.
But that one we definitely agree on. I do believe it's one thing that you can succeed in business. You can still walk away with a lot of money, but I am not sure you're happy afterwards.
And that's a critical point, and is one that often lands on my doorstep. Is the idea that I have affluence and I have success and I have all these things, and something is still missing. I still feel empty. What is it? And so it's not like they knock on my door and say, "Hey, I need emotional mastery or EQ or emotional awareness or be in touch with my feelings." They often don't have that language, but they do understand something is missing. Something feels empty. I can afford anything, and yet it's still not enough.
You and I have taken the opposite route to what we do. You help men. I primarily help women. How did you end up there? Why men? Why is that the main focus?
Just became statistics in the sense that it just happened to be the majority of the audience that I work with. So I work with females as well. It just happens to be that, there's more males that sit in those roles. And the way the book is structured is that the part that's about just sort of, basic human neuroscience and function and attachment is universal to all populations. Then there's some content that is about high performers, and that'll be high performers in general. And then it's high performing males, and more specifically with respect to intimate relationships. So that kind of is the tiered approach of the book. As far as why they're intimate relationships, because those are most often the most impactful relationships for this population. And so if you can optimize that, then there's a domino effect of optimizing their leadership and their mentorship and other areas of their life.
Knowing you while you were writing this over a longer time frame, I'm going to ask you a hard question, Leila. Have you heard the concept of killing your darlings? Which chapter did you remove that you really wished were still in there, or is the embryo to your next book?
Oh my God. So it's beyond which chapter did I remove. Where I started, I had an amazing editor and team that I worked with. So it's not even just which chapter, it's which parts of the entire book, almost removing an entire other book, from where I started to where I ended up today. And as far as a precursor to another book, I don't know. There's, I'm just birthing this one. So I think it'll be a minute before I figure out what's next.
I love it. The reason why I said it was a little bit selfish as well. I had my first read through on Saturday of the end-to-end version of the book I've been working on. And when I finished it, I'm like, okay, this is going to be great. But instantly my brain went, and you can already map what's happening. I'm like, I know my next book. Like in that moment, I knew exactly what I'm going to do next. But I have to hold myself back. You're told that to me many times. Finish one thing before you start the next thing. Classical visionary. Okay, tell me a little bit about how is it to be working with you? Tell me a little bit about what's sort of the flow. How long does it take an engagement typically take? What are sort of the expectations for people that are interested in working with you?
A great question. So I think several things. One is the idea that your brain is your only frame of reference. And so the greatest opportunity, I think, in having working with someone like me is that it is an outsider perspective to what you are going through. Now, it's an outsider perspective from someone who deeply understands you and your experience in this case. So it's an outsider perspective. And it starts with creating deep care and trust, because so long as you believe that I deeply care for you and that we establish trust, then whatever we layer on top of that is developing in that soil. And so establishing that deep care and trust, and then from there, the opportunity to get another perspective on your reality from someone who has the neuroscience and the psychology and the business acumen and the experience to give you other perspectives in terms of, what we look deeply at is not what you do, but why you do it, because understanding the why is where you create that deep sustainable change. So for example, if you choose not to engage with deep connection with your leadership team, or if you have a tendency to cut people off, if you have a tendency to be abrupt, those are the what? They're the external manifestations. They're the external behaviors. We want to understand why, so that once you understand why, you can create, again, that deeper sustainable behavior change because you know why you're doing something. Your brain has a lot of work to do with very little real estate, and it needs efficiency. So there's very little that happens arbitrarily. Everything you do has purpose. And so if what I'm doing is cutting you off, then there's a reason that behavior became birthed within my habits.
How many years do you typically work, or months is a typical engagement with someone? I know they never graduate, but at least they go from the yellow belt to a blue belt, or a couple of belts in, or whatever you want to say.
It totally varies, because it's what's the person's openness. Did the person come to me on their own, or did the board mandate it? Did the investors mandate it? That's another driver. Also, they get to a point often where, they've done this deep discovery work and they've sort of uncovered this new layer of themselves, but they want to keep going. So that happens very often. So it totally varies.
Okay. No pattern?
I mean, I have people I've been with for years.
The reason why I ask is we're in a similar field. I stumble upon people that want quick fixes. I stumble upon people that it's been mandated by someone else. And then I stumble upon people who really want it. Obviously, the people really wanting it gets the furthest, the quickest. And something that has puzzled me for a long time with helping yourself, or working with a coach or a mentor, an advisor, or whatever it is that you're doing, joining a mastermind for all I care, the delta is how quickly can you go from being told to do it to wanting to do it. So it's like almost before you see people, what is it that if you could speak to all of them, maybe there are some listeners, what is it that you want to tell them so they quickly can make that journey and be ready for what you offer and what I offer?
The challenge with answering that question is, on the contrary, I tell people this is not the quick place. That this audience is used to saying, okay, great, I've now decided to do this, or I've been told I have to do this. Then tell me what to do. Give me the instruction book. I'm going to do it quickly and knock it out of the park. Because they're used to being high performers. And so give them a task, and that is how they'll achieve it. That is how they'll approach it. But on the contrary, this is the place where you have to slow down, where you have to go deep, where it has to take time. That becomes so contrary to their nature, it becomes one of the greatest resistances. The other challenge is that, in so many other areas, you can see change. You can see ROIs change. You can see products being developed. And this is change you can't see, sort of most visibly and automatically. It is change that you see over time. You wake up one day and you think, I didn't do this thing I used to do. I didn't act this way I used to act. I notice a difference. I feel different. And so that also becomes hey, I can't tell you in 3 months you'll have this ROI, in 4 months you'll have this product finished. And they just kind of have to get to that realization of that new experience, of that new self.
I'm with you. This is not a yardstick exercise. I wanted to prepare people listening for this. I want to argue it's a lifelong journey, but you for sure will be able to see the impact of the effort before the end of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be prepared to start the journey. Tell me a little bit. Oh yeah, go ahead, Leila.
Sorry, I was going to say the other thing that's really interesting to me is how often I see people who enter the journey and actually commit and go through the journey. Their mindset changes to then wanting more and saying, hey, I want to keep growing, whether it's going to be books or teachers or doing intensives or whatever the case may be. Their mindset changes to one of tell me what else there is. Tell me what else I can learn.
Okay, you finished the book. It was a labor of love for a couple of years, I want to say.
Yes.
How long?
4.5.
4.5 years. Okay. What was the personal changes, your personal evolution that you were going through? What was it during those 4.5 years that you started with and that you overcame? Tell me about that journey.
Twofold, I would say. One is my ongoing journey of personal attunement, somatic awareness, mental, physical, emotional awareness, vulnerability. So my ongoing journey of every aspect of the work I do with other people, I think was one. And then two, personal experiences around me that continued to show how much this work matters. Seeing other relationships and seeing, the challenges and trends, and then knowing that, God, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a different way. Man, I'm telling you, if you do some of these things, and in a world where our personal, intimate relationships become increasingly disposable, and replaceable, they take on different dynamics. Everyone's throwing out different statistics about the preponderance of how rampant divorce is, or all of that. It creates the isolation epidemic. Like, all of these things continue to disconnect us in a world where we continue to long more and more for the opposite of that, which is connection.
And love, which is one of your core values. I know that. Sorry if I'm disclosing too much here to the
Not at all.
listeners.
Not at
But
all.
why are you doing it? Why 4.5 years, Leila? Why choosing this profession? Like, what, ignore the money aspect of it. What fulfills you with the work you're doing?
I feel a really deep sense of purpose. I feel that, God, or whatever, the universe, whatever you believe in, made me this way for a reason, gave me the experiences to have the intimate understanding of this population for a reason. And I don't want to waste that. I don't want to miss the opportunity to have lived that and fulfilled that purpose. And that fundamentally drives me so deeply.
I love that. And which is why I know you care so much for getting this in the hands of a lot of people. It's not a get rich thing because books don't give you money, but you are helping people. And we talked about this. And also the getting a text message sometime from someone else that you helped, or just getting a thank you sometimes, its value is not measurable with anything. And I know
I'm
we talked
telling
about that
you,
many times.
oh my God. I get messages years down the line, and if I could just capture these in a box, they are just pure love and energy. It is absolutely priceless.
Let's do a little bit of a lightning round. I'll ask you a couple of quick questions. You're good at giving short and precise answers, so I'm not too worried about it. Some of them are kind of on topic, others are a little off. Most underestimated leadership skill.
Listening.
One phrase that helps recenter you under pressure.
It's not really a phrase as much as it is just sort of a belief that of how precious time is. The idea of how much time matters.
I agree with that 1,000%.
So let me extend that. The idea that because time is so precious, I'm very intentional about how I spend my time, whether it's time relaxing, working, purpose, friends, loved ones, doing whatever it is, very intentional about my time.
And I'll add, I have a lot of CEO friends and a lot of executives, and you are by far the one that is so in control of it, but I also think you live a happy and purposeful life because of it.
Absolutely.
This one is easy. Hint, not. Best advice you ever ignored, but you shouldn't have.
Oof. Best advice someone gave me that I ignored, but I shouldn't have. You stumped me on that one. I don't know.
Is it possible, Leila? I've known you for years and I stumped you.
I think
This
it's
is a
the
win.
ignoring part that is getting me, because I try to be open, and I'm blessed to have good counsel around me. And so if I get advice, it's typically from someone that I know cares deeply. It's not often that I won't at least look into what they're saying for its legitimacy, approaching things with curiosity. So I struggle with the ignore part.
I love it. That's okay. But the other way of asking that question is obviously, when you were given advice earlier in your life, you first at a much later point understood the value of it. And I think sometimes, me personally, I go back and I think back to previous advice. I'm trying to figure out, does it apply now? This person loved me. Why did they say that to me? But I can sometimes, those pop up in my head years later. Anyway, book or thinker that shaped you and your approach to performance.
Dan Siegel, Mindsight, for sure, is a big one. Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, System 1 and 2. I talk about that a lot in the book. That's a big one.
Those are good.
Yeah.
Last question. What do you believe about peak performance that most people don't?
For most of this population, they are just sort of born this way. You can improve your performance if you are not innately a high performer. You can improve your performance, but to achieve the levels that this population does is beyond just your skill and practice. There's some part of that sliver that becomes just something that's innate in them.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Leila, how do people find you? Where do they find your book? If you could do a 30-second to a minute, like, this is me, this is why you want to work with me, where do I find you?
Super easy. My website is Work with Leila. So it's Leila, workwithleila.com. And there's a link for the book. There's free content you can download and use. And then LinkedIn is where I'm most active. So 2 places.
Awesome. Leila, thank you so much. And I want to say you're a fantastic human being. You and I always have amazing conversations. I always learn something, and I did learn something today as well. And I hope that will continue for years to come.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for the important work that you do and the intention that you do it with.
So where can everyone else learn more about conversations like this? Well, you can search for Adapt or Die. And I think today's conversation really showcased that we are never really done growing. We're never really done learning. And I think the quicker in life you go through some of these changes, the more you will appreciate it. And life is long if you know how to use it. Please subscribe to me on Instagram, on YouTube. It's Andreas, the CEO. Please, please, please leave a 5-star rating for this podcast. It helps other leaders find it. And maybe you sharing it with someone else will also make them overcome a struggle they have in their life. Again, thank you so much, Leila. I really appreciate it. Have an amazing day.